You don't need it. All right, so I'm now recording our example program today is this bill estimator. And it's just a bunch of ifs for us to deal with. And so somebody wants to estimate their bill. They don't have some previous bill, they want to estimate their bill. And so we want to help them out. And so the first thing we ask is what kind of house. So if a house is isolated by itself, harder to eat than if it's two houses next to each other, that's a duplex. Or if there are houses on both sides of it, if it's a row, then you don't lose as much heat. So we're going to say the bill will depend on what kind of house. And these numbers are probably way wrong. Who cares? It's just a bunch of ifs. That's the point. Depends on the season of the year. Fall and spring have more moderate temperatures, or at least they're supposed to. And then summer is really hot and summer is cold, and that's when we need higher bill to sort of get the temperature we want. And then in the summer, it depends if you're going to sort of run an central air conditioning or not. So that's what our so are we going to use what kind of house do we have? What season is it? And if it's summer, are we going to be running that air conditioning, or are we just going to like suffer a little bit? Okay, so this is the information we need to ask, and then we want to figure out their answers to those questions, and based on those answers, then come up with a number for our estimate. So this is the scenario. So now we have to make a page that allows the user to answer these questions. So how do you, what elements do you want on the page to allow the user to answer these questions? This is the best one to create the select. Okay, so he's saying inputs and he's saying select. So fight it out. He's changed his mind to select. Okay, so now he agrees with you. So if you have a few answers that you want to control, so it's not like when you do your homework and when you figure out how many hours somebody entered or what wage they make, there could be lots and lots of answers, too many for you to predict them all. And then you would use if those are numbers, so you would use a number input. But if there are a few choices and you want to completely control those choices, then you use a select. And there's an in-between thing where you can type, but you can also make choices, which I haven't taught you yet. I don't know, maybe I will if somebody asks me, teach that thing, but not today. Today, there are a few choices for what type of home, single, double, row. There are a few choices for the season, fall, spring, winter, summer. And then we have to talk about central air. When there are only two choices, then there's another option other than a dropdown. You can use a dropdown with just two choices, but there's also another choice. Okay, so let me open code. And it should be open to my folder. I'm going to open the Explorer at least for a second. And then within my folder, I'm going to make a bill estimator. .html, have the extension, let the computer know what kind of file we're making. We're making a web file, an HTML file. So then I can type shift exclamation point and get the emit abbreviation. And it brings up some stuff to start with. I'm going to say bill estimator. And I'll make a header. Bill estimator. And I'll save it. Okay, I'm not going to do any style, maybe later, but probably will run out of time. Because the problem with this problem is that there are so many ways to do it. So I'll be run out of time, just maybe even doing it one way. Okay, so we have the beginning of our page. We said we wanted selects to have them enter the, do you want to ask them about the season of the year first, or do you want to ask them about the type of house first? What did you say? Type of house.
Select and select, like when you press single, there's another 3 options.
You want to have a select with choices on, you want one select with then
Select.
choices under it. You want the choices to say single, or do you want it to be sort of branched out under?
Like when you click open with, and do you have
Open, yeah, when I click open with.
select 3 options. You click one, there's another 3 options.
All right, that's advanced. So I'll consider it another time, not today. I want to get to the ifs, and so I don't want to spend my time on fancy selects, but there are fancier selects than what we know. So I said there's one where you can type in it, and then you want one where there are sort of sub options. All right. But let's just go for, and you wanted, already forgot, the house, the type of house. I'm going to have a label. I'm going to have a select. I'm going to have options in the select. The select will have an ID, so I can access it. I'll call it cell type. And I'll do a for. And then the option. So I'm entering the type of house in an option. I have a value. That's what we use behind the scenes. And then I have what's between the open option and the close option. And that's what the user sees. So now I know what I want the user to see. I want them to say single duplex and row. So I'm not giving you any choice on what they see, because I told you what I wanted them to see in my description. But now behind the scenes, we get to choose what we want that makes it our life easier as a coder. So what do you want to use for the values behind the scenes? We could put numbers. We don't have to put numbers. It could be letters, it could be the words spelled out, it could be letters, it could be ABC, it could be SDR. Hmm? You just want to do it? All right. He just wants them to be the same. Remember that the values are what we get behind the scenes, and that's what we will be asking our questions about. So he said we want to ask a question about spelled out single, duplex, and row. So our code will be slightly more subject to spelling errors on one hand, but on the other hand, it will be clear what the code implies because there won't be any secret codes. It'll be clear that you're asking the question about single because it will say if something equals single. Okay. So those are the choices we're making. So that's why I make you make the choices rather than me make the choices, so that you realize that there are choices and what are the implications of your choices. Okay. Do you want to enter the next thing on the same line, or do you want to put it under? Put it under. So then I'm going to have a break. And then I'm going to have another select, or I'm going to have another label. And then I'm going to have another select. And that label is going to say, what am I entering now? The season of the year. And so I'll say that the ID is cell, keep doing that, cell season, I'll say. And then the choices are what? So I have 4 choices. Let's say there are 4 choices. It's possible that I could make 3 choices because fall and spring are the same. But I'm going to make 4 choices because I'm a pain in the ass. But it would be possible for you as an interface designer to say, well, fall and spring are the same, so I'm just going to make them one option. What order do I want to put them in? I don't know. Fall, winter, spring, summer. And we have the same question we had before. What do we want to make the values? What do we want to make the behind the scenes? And we could say 1, 2, 3, or 0, 1, 2, 3, or ABC, or S, well, some spring and summer both start with an S, but we could say FA, WI, SP, and SU, or we could spell it out. Those are all choices. They're behind the scene choices. The person never sees. It just affects our code, just affects us as coders and anybody looking at our code. What do you want? Just spell them out again. Okay. And I happen to capitalize them, so we have to remember that. If you don't want, we can go back and not capitalize them, but we just have to match exactly. When the time comes. All right. So now we have to, let's see where we're at. Save, right click, open with a live server. There's the place to enter the house. There's the place to enter the season. Okay. Now comes the time where we're going to say, do you have central air? We can use a select for that, or we can use something else. Checkbox. Do you want to use a checkbox? He wants to use a checkbox. Okay. All right, let's just see what a checkbox looks like, making sure everybody's on the same page. There's the checkbox. I probably want a little break for one. I tend to put my checkbox and then the label. That's what I tend to do with checkboxes. Let's give that ID, that in checkbox input an ID. I tend to call it either CH or CHK for my prefix. Now let's say CH is enough. And then what? Air, I'll say. I can spell air. Do you have central air or not? And then the label, and then then the label is for that. I can't spell for, F-O-R, there we go. And that is must match. Okay. And now we'll say, do you have central air or something? I don't know. Or using central air, not just do you have it, but are you using it? But anyway. Okay. Now, all the times before I've said with this for and this ID matching thing that is just for behind the scene readers. This is not true anymore with a checkbox. Having the label and the for match up allow you to click on the label. I can click on the checkbox. I can click on the label. So this is a case where that for and ID matching does more, does something that even a normal sighted viewer of the page, user of the page can do. Okay. And then I'll do everything else on a button. Somebody asked me last week, can you do all that stuff with whatever we're doing Friday without the button, just redo the calculation when they change the data? And the answer is yes, but not today. But that's one of those questions you can ask me in the future. Input, type button. And I'll give it a value of estimate the bill, and I will give it an ID in case I want to code it somehow, button, estimate, and I'll give it an on click. And we'll call a function to estimate the bill. I'll call my function estimate. If I'm calling a function called estimate, then I must define a function called estimate. So I need a script area. I need a function. I call my function estimate. Open, close parenthesis, open, close curly. And then that's where I'm going to define the function. Then when I get an estimate, I need a place to put it on the page. We can put it in a label, we can put it in a span, we can put it in a div, we can put it in a text area. What do you want to put this answer in?
In the text. In the text.
Text area or
yeah, text area.
Text area. He likes the text areas. Now, a text area is a place where the user can write ordinarily. I want to stop them from doing that. What should I do? Read only. I want to code this, so I need to give it an ID. I usually say TA for text area. I could call it result. I could call it estimate. I could call it bill. What do you want to call it? TA is not finance. TA is just a prefix. I need something that describes what it does beyond that.
Bill.
Bill, okay. It is fine as far as the computer is concerned, but it's not fine as far as I want it to have relate somehow to its job. Okay, so it's read only, so only we'll type in there as coders, but the user will not. We have the ID so that we can write in there. Let's do this. How many rows do you want? 4, thanks for your help. All right, columns, how many columns do you want? 4 columns? 10. All right. Say 10 and then we can change it if we don't like it. So there's our box. Maybe I need a break, right? If I wanted a big long line going across, what would I do? I wanted a big long line going across the page. Don't remember. HR, horizontal rule. One of those vocab words that were due today. At least he knows that he was supposed to remember.
Yeah.
It's okay not to remember.
Because I was like, oh, that's cool. That's fine.
Okay, so, and let's do this. Let's just say hi and see if we have the page. It's the way we want it to look, and do we have at least a basic response to a function? I want probably a break before the bill. It says hi. So where is the bill? I probably want this to say BTN estimate. And I probably want a break before the bill. Okay. So it's lovely, it's beautiful, it's got absolutely zero style. Okay. So we need to collect our information. We're going to collect the type of house. We're going to collect the season. We're going to collect whether or not they have air conditioning. There are different ways to do this. And then we need to start asking questions. Okay. So I'm going to bring in what? I'm going to bring in the, what did we ask first? The type of house. I am worried that the word type sometimes has a special meaning in computers, in programming languages. So I'm afraid of the word type. I don't want to call my variable type. It might be a reserved word. So give me another name that we could call this piece of information coming in. Can't spend this long coming up with variable names. You're going to run out of time on the test. Sort, classes. Type, I'm not sure about. Class is definitely a special word. But sort may be a special. Kind. Okay, that won't be. You could call it house, you could call it kind, you could call it house type, you could call it house class, you know, house sort. You kept coming up with words that are also computer science words. Sort means to put things in order. class is a thing that we'll learn about much later in the semester. So this I wanted to avoid them for the same reason I wanted to avoid type. They might be special words. And I don't have to ask about class. I know class is a special word. Okay, so kind, document, get element by ID. What was the name of our ID? It was cell something, cell type. Is that what it was? Cell type. And then we want to get from that the value. And then we'll say, let's alert it. Let's alert this thing called kind and see. So get one piece of information. Did we get that piece of information? Hit the button. There is single. There is duplex. There is row. Okay, so we have that piece of information. We got it off the page. We confirmed that we had it off the page. Now let's get the next piece of information off the page. And that was what? The season, right? I'll just spell it out. Season. Document. Get element by ID. Cell. I guess I called it cell season. We'll see. And I want the, from that, I want the value. Get rid of this Explorer. Let me save. Let me alert the season. Let me save again. Let me run it. And so hit the button and there's fall. And I had commented out the kind, so we're not expecting to see that. There was fall, there's winter, there's spring, and there's summer. Okay. Now, do we want to ask right away about the checkbox, or do we only want to worry about the checkbox if it happens to be summer? Okay, so you only want to worry about the checkbox when we figure out if it's summer. So we have our kind of house and we have our season. And now we want to start, forget about central air for now. We'll figure it out when it's summer. We want to start asking the questions to figure out the bill. This is when you're asking questions, you're using if. So that now we have to start asking our if questions. So what question do you want to ask first? And this is where it comes up that there are many ways to do this. I have multiple questions. I have the season question and I have the house question, putting off the central air question to later. I can ask if it's a certain season and then find out if it's that given season, if it's fall. And then within the part of the code that's true, I can then go and ask, is it what kind of house? Is it a duplex? So I can put one if inside another if. That is called nesting. That's an approach. I can combine questions. I can ask, is it true that it's fall? And is it true that you have a duplex? So I can have a more complicated question. So I can have questions within questions, or I can have more complicated questions, or I can concatenate the type of the house and the season, the kind and the season, and then just have simple question, but a lot more questions. That's at least 3 approaches we have that we can say, I can ask the first question, the first simple question, and then ask within that question, ask other questions about the other thing. I can ask more complicated questions about is this and that both true? Or I can take my two variables, concatenate them, make them one more complicated variable, and just then have lots of questions. So there are many approaches to this. Which one, like said, like I think I understood what he said there. I have no idea what he said the other one. What do you want me to try? First one. The first one. Okay, it's the questions within the questions. So let's keep the questions simple. Let's just do we want to ask? Let's ask about the house type first. That's the data we got first. Let's just ask our set of if questions about the house, the kind, and then when we got that settled, then we will ask these sub questions about the season. Okay, so I'm going to ask if, and I'm going to have a question, and then I'm going to do what I want to do if that is true. So I want to ask if kind is the type of house. And I want to ask if it is equal. When I'm asking a question, if two things are equal, I use two equals. If I use one equal, I'm making them equal. If I'm asking a question, it's two equals. And what was our first type of house? Single with a capital S.
Are we putting in the value or value? The options?
The value from the options. And I'll say here alert single, just to see if we have what's going on. Oops, that's what I wanted. I have if it's not single, I have another question to ask. It's either going to be single or duplex or row. These possibilities are what we call mutually exclusive. So that means that with an if, we have an else to say what to do if it's false. And so then I can ask in the else, I can ask if it is a duplex. And I can ask the question just all over again, but it's more efficient if I do it as an else. So we were doing this on Friday. I said else, and then somebody said they wanted to ask another question. Remember, we were doing the BMI, and we figured out we asked the question if the BMI was low, then you were underweight. And then our follow-up, we didn't just say, oh, you're not underweight. We went and we asked another question. So just like on Friday, we have another question to ask. So the if goes straight into another question. And what's the other question? If the kind is duplex, then I'll alert duplex. I keep doing that. And the last case, there are only three possibilities. You're either single or duplex or row. I don't have to ask if you're row, because if you weren't single and you weren't a duplex, you must be a row. So I can just put else. If I put else, if it would work, but it's slightly inefficient because I'm asking a question I don't need to ask. So would your program work? Yes. Would you get the job at Google? No. And we're a long way from getting the job at Google, but Let's at least try to get there. And this was row. Semicolon. So let's see if we have our first question, if we're getting the answers from the user and asking the question and knowing which branch we're in. So let's try duplex, winter, I have central air. I know that I was duplex. I changed to single, I know I'm single. I changed to row, I know I'm row. So I have my 3 categories for the type of house separated in my ifs. So I had these fairly simple questions. Remember, when I'm asking questions about words, about what we call strings, then I'm usually asking if they're equal. And if I'm asking if things are equal, I use 2 equals. If on that first question, if I use 1 equal, it would make kind equal to single. And no matter what kind of house the user chose, it would become single because I only had 1 equal. So I need 2 equals to ask a question. Okay. So now I want to ask within, if it is a single, I want to ask a question within that. So if it is single, now I'm going to ask you about the season. If the season is fall, and I'm going to say alert fall. Else if the season is winter. And then I'll just say alert winter. I have 1 equal in season, and not a one of you yelled at me. So it's my mistake, but it's your fault. All right. Next up is spring. And I can write spring as if it's a separate case from fall. Or I can treat it, I can treat the spring the same as fall. You want me to treat it like a... So I had that choice on the interface. I also have that choice in code. I can ask, I can treat, there's a way for me to treat spring in here, or I can just ask it like it's another question. You want to ask it like it's another question, or do you want to combine it with fall? Combine it. Okay, then I have to teach you another thing. So it could be fall or spring. And the way we make an or is 2 vertical bars. And then we have to ask the question all over again. If season equal spring. So if the season is fall or if the season is spring, that's a category. Since the answer ends up to be the same, we combine them and we combine them with this thing called an or. There's something called an and where 2 things have to be true. Both of these things will never both be true, but one may be true or the other may be true. That's what we use, so we call them an or. And then, so we had fall, we had spring, we had winter, we still need summer. It's mutually exclusive. There are only 4 possibilities. So we can just use else. We don't have to ask the question because there's nothing left. Now let's choose single. We don't have this breakdown for the other seasons. I mean, for the other types of house, but let's try single and see if we can also get the information about the season. Going to save. So for a single house, there's single and fall or spring. Here's winter, single and winter. Spring, there's single and fall or spring. Summer, there's single and summer. So we have, within single, we have all of our follow-up questions. If it's fall or spring, if it's winter, if it's summer. Here's the part you're going to either love or hate. We ask the same questions if it's duplex or if it's row. I mean, the numbers will be different, but I haven't put in the numbers yet. But I can just copy this from 40, for me, 45 to 53. The ifs then are about the, well, let me tell you this, remind you that you can right click and format the document. And it will help if you haven't been sort of indenting and getting your ifs and elses lined up, it will help do that. And so for me, now 46 to 54 is this if about the season. And I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to put it under duplex. And I'm going to put it under row. Save that. So now I have that same structure for single and for duplex and for row. Start putting in numbers, or do you want to ask about central air? We have about 5 minutes. Numbers, start putting in numbers. Okay, so we'll worry about summer. Probably finish summer maybe on Wednesday, but let's start figuring out this estimate of a bit. I can put the answer on the page here and here and here in all those places. Or I can introduce a variable, which is my bill, and just say the bill here was $50. And then when it's all done, one time put the bill on the page. So do you want to say just a number, simple variable equals a number, and then deal with the page at the end? Or do you want to, in each place, deal with the interface? Or one's better. You want to use the variable and deal with that at the end. So I'm going to have a variable. I'll up here say let bill. And then here is bill equals for a single in the fall. Single in the fall was $50. Okay. And the single in the winter was $250. In the summer, that's the wrong thing. In the summer was 50 unless it's central air, so we have to come back and deal with central air, but I'll keep the 50 for now. wet, but it's okay. And more numbers and more numbers and more numbers. So, but fill that in, I'll fill it in afterward. Now, I have all these curly brackets. It's so easy to lose yourself in all these curly brackets, but I did remember right-click and format. And here's this yellow for me. There's this color coding. There's that yellow. And that matches this. That matches my estimate. So I want to be inside the function and deal with the page. So I want to be inside that. What's this? I don't know, magenta. That matches this else, which goes along with this whole structure. So that's all this if structure. So I want to be after that, but be after the purple, but before the yellow. That's when I want to deal with the page. Document. Get element by ID. I called it TA. Did I call it TA bill?
Yeah.
I called it TA bill. I told you that when I work with the text areas, I like to work with the value. And I want it to be equal to the bill. I'm going to give it a $ in front plus the bill. And I'm going to say 2 fixed and give me 2 decimal places. So now I only have the bill for the singles because I was lazy and running out of time. But here we are for the single for the fall, that was 50. The winter is different. Here's the single in the winter, that was 250. And if I'm in the summer, I should be back to 50. 50. I owe you, I'm out of time. I owe you more numbers. I owe you how to deal with the checkbox to figure out the central layer. Pick up this on Wednesday. Tomorrow is lab. We'll be doing something else, but something with ifs. I will post this. I will post the video. Yell at me if I forget. Any last minute questions for the video before I stop recording? Let me stop recording.